What if I told you that you've been playing Belle wrong this entire time? This video features the best tips and tricks to help you play the leader of the Gold Arm gang, Belle. Alright, so to start off this guy, let's go to talk about Belle's main attack, Shocker. Belle fires a very long-range bolt that bounces from multiple enemies who are within 3 tiles of each other, until the targets are too far from each other or until one is defeated. Enemies only bounce one attack to each other at a time, regardless if it hits multiple times from separate attacks or not. The bolts have a 1-second delay of sticking to the target before they bounce, with subsequent shots dealing half the damage of the initial shot and half supercharge. Now whenever you're playing Belle and using her main attacks, always take advantage of grouped up enemies. Because of the bouncing mechanic, enemies are forced to separate and you and your team can trap and defeat them individually, leading the enemies into an uncomfortable situation and position. Her passive chaining bolts and their bounces force enemies to distance themselves, making them vulnerable to assassins who can pick them off individually. Now let's say you're playing against enemies that have like a spawnable or a turret, then you can just shoot that, and hopefully when it hits that spawnable or other thing, then it can shoot off and hit another enemy. Sometimes it's better to work smarter and not harder. Just shoot at something that isn't moving and nearby the enemies and let the bounce shots do the work for you. This is great when playing heist because you can strictly aim to shoot the safe and just let the bounce shots chip down the enemies that are standing near it. Now something I personally love about the bounce shots is it can kind of indicate if there's an enemy nearby the target that you're shooting. The bounce shots will always travel to the nearest enemy that is within 3 tiles of the target that you hit, right? So you need to always be watching if the bolt can help hint that there's another enemy within the area. Now something that's great about Belle's main attack is that her main attack range helps her just stay consistent and hang with the other sharpshooters in the game. You need to use her main attack to your advantage to keep your distance and poke away at the enemies. She can easily hang with other long-range sharpshooters in the game such as Piper, Brock, and Angelo, which makes her a great pick in opened up maps. Now unlike a brawler like Piper, say for example, there is no damage fall off with Belle, so you can play a little bit more aggressive than you're used to. Unlike Piper where she deals less damage at a closer range, you can play Belle a little bit more aggressively, especially since Belle's health is not bad for a sharpshooter and she has the positive feedback star power. I mean, she has a lot of ways to help her stay alive. Okay, that's gonna be it for Belle's main attack. Let's go to talk about her super, Spotter. Belle's super is a long range attack that deals low damage to the target and marks it, making the damage the enemy takes increase by 35% from any source until they are defeated, or Belle uses her super on another target. Remember that only one enemy can have this status effect from each Belle. If Belle already has a target marked and she misses another super, the old target is still going to be marked. Now one of the main ways you need to be using Belle's super is against tanks, aggro brawlers, or just assassins too. The additional 35% damage that the enemies take will be helpful for dealing with the beefiest of brawlers, especially if your teams are running brawlers that don't deal high bursting damage and have low health. Then even more so, the emphasis of needing to mark up those enemies is just drastically shoots up. Now a pro tip that a lot of people probably don't even realize about Belle is that her super's range is actually longer than her main attack range. This is a great tip to help you hit enemies that are slightly out of your attack range and are really close to dying. If the enemies are below 1000 health and are running away from you, your best bet might be to use your super to just finish off that enemy and get them out of the picture. Now yes, you can use your super on like the beefiest brawler in the game so you can do more damage, but I'd also recommend using your super on the best player on the enemy team. Like I said, yes, you want to use your super on the highest health brawler to get them down faster, but targeting the best brawler on the other team can also be the way to go. Mark up that player that's carrying the enemy team so you and your teammates can target them down so they can't carry as hard. Like it's probably like, Brent, I always miss my super, how can I increase my chances of actually connecting with it? Well, I'd recommend just shooting your main attack in one direction, baiting the enemies to move in the other direction, and then fire your super at them. Since you really want to make sure you are connecting with your super, it'll be smart to bait the enemies to dodge your main attack so you have a higher chance of hitting your super. Just watch where the enemy moves when dodging your main attack and then fire in that direction to hit your super. I guarantee if you guys do this, you'll be increasing your chances of hitting your super by a lot. Now there may be some times where you just want to mark up people just so you can use up your super, then that can be very helpful to cause them to play more passive. Since the enemies that are marked up can't do anything to remove the mark unless they die, they're going to be playing more passively so they don't take a lot of damage. This will cause the enemies to play more laid back and help you and your team gain control of the map with ease. Now this next tip kind of goes along with my other tip that I talked about, using it against like tanks, aggro brawlers, or assassins. So if like brawlers like that get too close to you, then you want to save your super and use it onto them at that moment. Like say for example there's an assassin or a tank that gets within striking distance of you, you can use your super onto them and then spam your auto aim onto them so you can hopefully finish off the enemy before they finish you off. Also try to save up ammo in this scenario because you'll obviously need ammo to kill the enemy. But okay, that's gonna be for Belle's super. Let's go to talk about her gadgets, but the first one I want to talk about is gonna be Nest Egg. Belle deploys a trap at her current location that is visible for a second after its placed before becoming invisible. The traps remain on the map until triggered by enemies walking over it. Multiple traps can be placed on the map without one of them disappearing. When triggered, it immediately deals 624 damage to the victim, other enemies within its 3-tile radius, and slows them down for 3 seconds. Now let's say there's an enemy chasing you, you can actually just go ahead and pop that Nest Egg gadget so that they end up stepping on it. This can be a great tactic to use that may help you escape short range brawlers. This will cause the enemies to be slowed down for the next 3 seconds, and that might be all you need in order to run away in time before you die. Now I really love this gadget, especially when you can place it in a certain choke point to prevent the enemies from walking to the objective or whatever they have to do in the game. But like I said, her Nest Egg gadget is going to be great to trap choke points on maps as it can force brawlers to walk over her traps, giving the opportunity for a good ambush. Now a common mistake I always see is that people just go and use the gadget and they run away and they're not going to be able to know when the Nest Egg gadget gets activated. So what I'd recommend is that you always have your Nest Egg gadget in sight in case it gets activated. You need to take advantage whenever the enemies get trapped in the gadget and are slowed down. Since they won't be able to get away as easily, it should make them an easy target for you and your teammates to get them down and charge up your supers. Now I'd recommend using the Nest Egg gadget on more open up maps because on maps that have more walls and bushes, that's when you're going to want to use reverse polarity. Technically you could use this gadget on maps that have walls too because you can place the gadget right next to a wall that the enemies will run past, but usually you would want to use reverse polarity on maps that have walls. So other than that, if you're playing on a map that's more opened up, Nest Egg might work out better for you. Now speaking of her gadget reverse polarity, that's going to be the second gadget we're going to be talking about. Activating this gadget allows Belle's next attack to bounce off of walls. Belle's attack will gain additional range for each bounce. Now I'm going to be straight with you guys, this gadget is actually pretty hard to give tips about because it's all about you and the specific angle you're going to be needing in order to hit an enemy that could be hiding from you. Out of the millions of different angles you could use this gadget throughout all of the maps and game modes within the game, it's ultimately going to come down to you as the player to try and fire your gadget at the best angle possible to try and hit whoever or whatever your target may be. Now like I said before, this gadget is going to be a fantastic way to hit enemies that are hiding behind walls. What I'd recommend is bouncing your next bolt off a wall, kind of like a Rico or a rough shot, and have it hit the enemy to either deal damage or in a better case scenario defeat the enemy. Another tip I kind of want to give about reverse polarity is you want to try and use it when the enemies are really low on health and you know you can possibly get them down with this gadget. To catch the enemy off guard as best as possible, already be looking at the walls throughout the map, so if an enemy is hiding in a certain spot, you'll know ahead of time a potential wall you can use to shoot the gadget at so you can hit the enemy. However, you don't want to wait too long with the gadget symbol hovering over your head because the enemies will know that you'll be trying to fire your next shot up a wall to try and hit them. This gadget will always work best as a surprise. But okay, that's going to be it for our gadgets. Let's go to talk about our star powers, but the first one I want to talk about is going to be grounded. When Belle uses her super to mark an enemy brawler, the marked enemy's attacks stop reloading for 5 seconds. However, this does not prevent enemy brawlers from reloading their ammo with a star power or a gadget. Now I love this star power, it's pretty underrated because you can use it against short range brawlers. You can save your super to always use against tanks and assassins when they get too close to you so you can prevent them from reloading and getting you down. This will hopefully give you time to run away as it can be paired well with the Nest Egg gadget strategy I explained earlier. Now just think about it, you could use this star power in a game mode like Heist for example. If you can cycle up your super and constantly stop the enemies from reloading, they won't be able to deal any damage to your team safe. Even better is if you and your team can get the enemy down before the 5 seconds is up so you can gain pressure and control back up the map. Now what's pretty cool about this star power is it catches a ton of people off guard because not a lot of people use this star power, and this will definitely allow you to play way more aggressive with Belle. Since you won't have to worry as much as usual when getting close to the enemies, then you can play with a chip on your shoulder knowing you can shut down the enemies with your super. Just remember that you could still get bursted down if the enemies have ammo before you use your super onto them, so maybe bait out the enemy's ammo first so you won't die from their previous ammo they got before you use your super onto them. But okay, that's gonna be it for grounded. Let's go and talk about our second star power, positive feedback. If there is a bolt attached to an enemy brawler, Belle receives a shield that reduces all damage she takes by 20%. This applies to the subsequent bounce shots, and if Belle hits another enemy, the duration and effect don't stack, but the duration does reset. Since this star power's duration doesn't stack the more shots you hit, I'd recommend just conserving your ammo to try and prolong the shield as best as possible. This is actually a great star power as well for new players because this will teach you ammo conservation. Ammo conservation is extremely important, especially when playing sharpshooters. You want the shield to be active as long as possible, so if you are low on ammo, spacing out your shots can be a great way to make the most out of this star power. Now, as long as you can hit your shots and get that shield, it's going to help you guys so much in those 1v1 interactions because it's going to help increase your survivability. This is another positive thing about Belle's entire kit, is that she has two good star powers that can help with her survivability and encourage a bit more of an aggressive playstyle. In my opinion, this star power is just overall going to be better for Belle because you're only going to want to use grounded against like short range brawlers or tanks. Most of the time where you should be playing Belle anyways is on maps that are more opened up to take advantage of her long range. So theoretically, you're going to be facing other sharpshooters as well, so getting the same amount of value from the grounded star power is just highly unlikely. Just stick with positive feedback to have that shield, and it could help you survive some incoming shots from other long range brawlers. Belle has always been such a solid brawler inside the meta, but something that has made her even better is her Hypercharge magnetic. When activated, Belle's super will curve towards the nearest enemy. The homing super flies for an additional 2 tiles. She also gains a 26% speed boost, a 25% damage boost, as well as a 5% shield boost. Now don't get me wrong, even though this Hypercharge isn't the coolest or the flashiest in the game, hey, it gets the job done. It's pretty difficult for you to miss your Hypercharge super with Belle, so if you do, it's 100% a skill issue. But okay, in all seriousness, the Hypercharge is pretty much a 99% success rate of you hitting your super, so as long as you can mark up that enemy, hey, I consider that a success. But let's be real here, even though the Hypercharge gets the job done, the main reason why people actually buy and use the Hypercharge is for the stat buffs. The damage, speed, and shield boost can help Belle rush after the target she marked to get them down and pressure the enemies back. Belle is already a solid brawler without her Hypercharge, but the stat buffs from the Hypercharge is what has helped her shoot up into the S tier. But okay, the build I recommend you guys use for Belle is going to be the reverse polarity gadget on maps that have walls. You can go ahead and use nest egg on more open up maps like I said throughout the guide. 90% of the time, positive feedback is going to be the better star power, and that's the one the pros use, so go ahead and use positive feedback. As far as gears go ahead and run the reload gear because hey, she has that and it's going to help her reload and actually outperform other sharpshooters. And then finally, this one is kind of up to you. Personally, I like to use damage so you can help deal more damage, you know, whenever Belle drops below 50% health. Or another gear you can run if you don't want to run damage is shield, because she can even benefit even more with that additional 900 health. And then of course, go ahead and use the Hypercharge because it's definitely worth it even though it's not really the coolest. Well, anyway guys, if you guys enjoyed that brawler guide, I highly recommend go check out this brawler guide right here.